Now we're ready to start solving some equations. We're going to start out with the most basic type of equations. Those are one-step equations. One of the things that if you've been in any math classes before, you've probably heard it over and over again. It's like a mantra. We want to isolate the variable, or they say we want to get the variable by itself. You got to use opposite operations. You got to do it to both sides. And it gets to be like a mantra. Really quick, I want to go over why. An equation has an equal sign. Equal signs mean that both sides have the same value. They don't look the same, but they have the same value. I could have a dollar bill in this hand and 4 quarters in this hand, and I have the same value, they look different. If I turn right around and I add a nickel to this hand, I've got to add a nickel's worth of value to this hand to keep it balanced. Otherwise, this side, it's not equal anymore. If I add 5 pennies, it'll come right back into balance. You see, with equations, you have to do the same thing to both sides because you got to keep it balanced. That's the main thing that's going on. Okay. I picked equations, some of them where we should be able to look at it and get the right answer. So c plus 13 is 22. I know that in your brain you could say, I think the right answer is 10. Well, let's see, 10 plus 13, no, that's not 22. 9 plus 13 is 22. Boom, you got the right answer. That's not the algebraic way to do it. With algebra, especially with equations, we actually want to work backwards. We want to undo what was done so that we can figure out what the original number was. Even though you're able to look at it and say, hey, this is what I should do, you need to get used to thinking algebraically. So I don't want you to use the guess and check method where you just look at it and say, it's this, check it and see. It's this, check it and see. Get out of that habit. You got to start thinking algebraically. All right, so we have c plus 13 equals 22. Algebraically, you got to use an opposite operation to both sides to get the variable by itself. The variable is c. Okay, and we say opposite operations. What's the opposite of adding 13? The opposite of adding 13 is subtracting 13. Well, if you take 13 away from the right-hand side, it gets lighter. You got to take 13 away from the left-hand side, treat them like they're the same. So minus 13. 22 minus 13 is 9. So the correct answer here is c equals 9. Don't just write the 9. You've got to actually state that c equals 9. The 9 by itself doesn't mean anything. All right. A minus 1.3 equals 5.7. Now I've got a subtraction. Again, the variable is right here. We want to get it by itself. Got to kind of think of a variable like it's got the plague. You know, everything wants to get away from it. So to get rid of minus 1.3, we add 1.3, we add 1.3. Notice here's the equal sign, so I'm doing it to both sides of the equals. So that gives me A. When you're dealing with decimals, you want to line them up. 5.7 and 1.3, 0 carrying 1. 7.0 or 7. Now, I want to point something out really quick. Positive 13 and negative 13, when you add those together, they add up to 0. A lot of times, teachers will cross them out when it cancels. You don't have to. Just help some people. Negative 1.3 and positive 1.3, they add up to 0, so they cancel out. Adding and subtracting, you are using what's called the additive inverse there. All right, you want to get it so that it adds up to 0 to cancel it out. Now, I have 9r equals 18 for the next one. This is multiplying. This means 9 times r. All right. The inverse of multiplying is dividing. So the straightforward way to do this is to divide. Now there are some teachers that teach the multiplicative inverse, and that's a fancy way to say you multiply by the reciprocal. That works. This method works also. The other method is actually a little more technically correct, but this method works fine for 99% of the problems, so we're going to use it. So 9 times r, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide by 9, divide by 9. 18 divided by 9, r equals 2. And again, I know you could have looked at it and said 9 times 2 is 18, but we're working on algebraic thinking here. The last one, negative 5q equals 15. Again, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. Now we're going to divide by negative 5 on both sides. The negative 5's go away, and I end up getting q equals negative 3. Now really quick, what's 9 divided by 9? It does cancel out, but 9 divided by 9 is 1. For the number that's next to the variable, we actually need a 1 there, not a 0, because 0 times r is 0. It would eliminate itself. 1 times r is r. So we need it to be a 1. So if we're multiplying by 9, we're going to divide by 9. Here we're multiplying by negative 5. I know there were some of you out there that just wanted to divide by 5. You didn't want to divide by the negative. You have to divide by the negative because you want a 1 to be in front of the r. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. If we had divided by positive 5, we would have been left with negative q. We want the variable by itself. The negative would still be next to it. So to get rid of the negative sign, we have to divide by it. I hope that helps, and good luck.